The town of Red Creek whispered about one man more than any other. His name was Elias McAllister, a rancher whose land stretched farther than the eye could see, whose herds numbered in the thousands, and whose reputation kept most men cautious. Some called him ruthless. Others called him untouchable. No one dared defy him. And yet, behind the stern jaw and cold gaze, Elias was a man who carried silence like a wound. 3 years earlier, he had buried his wife under the cottonwoods and had not spoken of her since. The only thing that remained soft in him were his 2 children, Grace and Thomas, who clung to him in the big, quiet house. When the Hayes family fell on hard times, tongues wagged in Red Creek. Their eldest daughter, Lillian, had just turned 20. Suitors had come before, but none had stayed. Her father's debts had mounted, and the family faced ruin. Desperate, Mr. Hayes struck a bargain no one in town expected. Lillian would be sent to Elias McAllister's ranch. Some said it was a transaction. Others whispered it was a cruel fate. To Lillian, it was both a sentence and a chance. She was not asked what she wanted. She was simply told. With no coin, no power, and no voice strong enough to change her family's course, she packed her meager belongings and mounted the wagon that would take her to Elias's land. The ranch rose on the horizon like a kingdom of its own. Rolling hills dotted with cattle, fences stretching for miles, and a great stone house standing proud against the endless sky. Lillian's breath caught when she saw it. She felt small, a trespasser in a world too vast, too hard. Elias himself waited by the steps, his figure tall and immovable. His hat shaded his eyes, but she felt the weight of his stare. When she climbed down, clutching her small satchel, she expected him to dismiss her, to wave her off as another burden. Instead, his voice came low and steady. "Miss Hayes." "Mr. McAllister," she answered, her own voice thinner than she liked. The silence stretched until Grace, his little girl, peeked from behind him. "Papa, is this the lady?" Elias's mouth twitched. He turned to his daughter. "Yes, Grace. This is Miss Lillian." Something shifted then. Grace's eyes lit with a hope that startled Lillian, and in that moment she understood. This wasn't only about her fate. It was about theirs too. Life at the ranch was not what Lillian expected. Elias gave her no commands, no chains, no threats. He simply left space for her to choose. At first, she worked in the kitchen, helping the housekeeper, then with the children, reading them stories and teaching them songs her mother once sang. Grace clung to her quickly, while Thomas, older and quieter, took longer to warm. Days turned into weeks, and Lillian began to notice things others in town had not. Elias was not cruel. He was careful. He carried his grief like armor, keeping people at bay. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were deliberate. He never raised his hand, never raised his voice. But his silence, heavy and unbroken, was its own wall. One evening after supper, Lillian lingered on the porch. The sky stretched wide with stars, the prairie humming with crickets. Elias stepped out, leaning against the post. "You've done well here," he said after a long pause. Lillian startled at his words. Praise was not something she had expected. She looked down. "I only do what I can." He studied her, his eyes unreadable. Most would have run. "You stayed." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. She wanted to ask why he had agreed to take her in the first place, but the words caught in her throat. She wasn't sure she wanted the answer. Trouble came in spring. A rival rancher, Samuel Grady, bitter and ambitious, sought to take Elias's grazing lands. He came one afternoon, riding with 4 men demanding to speak. Lillian was in the yard, hanging laundry, when she saw them approach. Grady's eyes lingered on her longer than she liked. His smirk carried more danger than words. "You've taken on new company, McAllister," he drawled. "Word is she was given to you like property." Elias's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, placing himself between Grady's gaze and Lillian. "You'll keep your mouth shut about her." Grady laughed. "Careful, McAllister. Sooner or later, your fences won't hold." When they rode off, the air stayed thick. Lillian's hands trembled as she gathered the laundry, but Elias's voice came steady. "Don't let him trouble you. He's nothing but noise." but she had seen the fire in Elias's eyes. He wasn't a man to pick fights, but he wasn't a man to bow either. And she realized then why no one dared defy him. That night, Lillian found herself restless. She wandered to the barn, where the lantern glowed faintly. Elias was there, mending a harness by hand. "You shouldn't let him talk about me that way," she blurted, surprising herself. Elias looked up slowly. "Why not?" "Because," she faltered, "because I'm not property." The silence stretched. Then Elias set aside the harness and stood. His height dwarfed hers, but his voice was quiet, deliberate. "I know that. I never thought of you that way." Her breath caught. "Then why take me in?" His eyes softened, a rare crack in the stone. "Because my children needed someone. And because you needed a place. Maybe we both did." The barn seemed smaller with those words hanging in the air. For the first time, Lillian felt the truth, that her fate here was not a punishment. It was a beginning. The weeks that followed tested them. Grady pushed harder, sending men to cut fences, scatter cattle. Elias fought to hold his land, but he didn't fight alone. Lillian stood with him, rallying the workers, calming the children, keeping the house steady when storms raged. One night, after a long day of repairs, Elias returned to find Grace and Thomas asleep by the fire, their heads resting against Lillian's lap. She looked up, her eyes tired but warm, and whispered, "They're safe." Something broke in Elias then. Not a wall, but a dam. For years he had carried grief alone, but here was someone who shared the weight, someone who had stepped into the silence and filled it with life. He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You've given them more than I ever could. And more than I deserve." Her heart pounded. "And what about you?" His answer was simple, but it carried the weight of the prairie itself. "I need you too." By summer, the ranch had steadied. Grady, beaten back by Elias's determination, retreated to his own lands. The children thrived, laughter filling the house. And Elias, once feared and untouchable, was seen in town with Lillian by his side. Their wedding was small, held under the cottonwoods where Elias's first wife rested. Some whispered at the choice, but Lillian understood. It wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about honoring it while building something new. When Elias spoke his vows, his voice carried across the prairie like thunder. "I was a man closed off, a man no one dared defy. But you, Lillian, you didn't defy me. You saved me. And I vow to spend my life proving worthy of the gift you've given me." Tears glistened in her eyes as she answered, "I came here with nothing, but I found a home, a family, and a love I never expected. And I will stand with you through every storm." The children scattered flowers at their feet, their laughter mingling with the wind. And as Elias and Lillian joined hands, the prairie seemed to open wider, no longer a place of loss, but of promise. Years later, when Red Creek spoke of Elias McAllister, they no longer spoke only of a rancher no one dared defy.